Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. This is episode 23. Today we have on special guest David Grabiner, a 35-year-old real estate investor and do-it-yourself landlord that manages over 150 multifamily and commercial units of his own, and additionally manages another 50 units for other people. He's a real estate coach that helps new investors all over the country, and in this episode he shares some crazy tenant stories that will give you a peek behind the curtain of what can and sometimes does happen as a landlord. So you're in for a treat today.
He had some wild stories, and we realized that in this business, you just sometimes have to expect them, but he's clearly powered through. He's got $15 million in assets between his commercial and between his commercial and his multifamily units. He's a rock star. So listen in, cool stories, cool guy, super nice, always willing to help out, and he does coaching on the side. So maybe if people are interested to reach out to him on Instagram.
Cool. And if you like what you've been hearing from us, please don't forget to share, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That goes an extremely long way for us. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod for daily content to assist in your journey towards financial freedom.
Let's get it.
Let's get it. Welcome to the episode. David, thanks so much for joining us today. We're super excited to have you. You had an episode with Sarah Brandenberger from Nerds Guide to Fi. We know that you were on her podcast recently too. So we're stoked to have you. Heard you're awesome and have a great story. So thanks for being on with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate you reaching out and asking me to be on. It's a real pleasure for me.
Absolutely. So if you could just give our listeners a little bit of background on yourself, where you're from, what you like to do for hobbies, and then, kind of like your story on how you got into real estate.
Okay. So I have kind of a crazy background. I was born in the States, in New Jersey, actually. And then I grew up in Massachusetts and Connecticut. But then when I was 10, I moved to Zambia, and my parents were missionaries over there. So my life was kind of all over. Then I came back to go to college. Then I went back and I went to Congo to work. So I kind of lived all over the world. But while I was over there, I got bit by the bug that I wanted to become financially independent. And so while I was over there, I bought my first quadplex back in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and started my real estate investing career.
Whoa. Wow. Okay. How did the bug bite you? What about that financial independence? Because it's kind of a Chattanooga, Tennessee. You hadn't really known much about Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Well, I went to college there.
Oh, you did go to college there. Okay.
That's where I went to college. Okay. So I knew the area. But really, I don't know if any of your listeners know Mr. Money Mustache, but he's big into the financial independence and living on a lot of less. So I started reading his blog, and I was like, yeah, this is a great idea. I want to have freedom to live wherever I want in the world and not worry. Not that I don't want to work because I love working, but not worry about what the job will pay me. I could pick any job in the world. It doesn't matter about pay. And so that was my aha moment. And I wasn't making much money, but I decided to save up money and invest so I could do that. And when I looked at it, the index fund would take me too long to get there. So I decided real estate was going to be the way.
I think a lot of people, when they decide they're going to go head first into real estate. You mentioned you're 35 now. We were talking previously, and that you started when you were 29. Even as somebody who's 28, 29, before they're 30, to dive into something as big in air quote, as a quadplex, I think that's sometimes frightening for people. What made you decide to go into multifamily and specifically a quadplex at that point?
Well, really, it was about I've been listening to Bigger Pockets and learning a lot, and I just came up with the metrics that I wanted to receive a 20% cash on cash return on my investment. And when I was looking at stuff, I realized pretty quickly the only way to really get that would be in multifamily. So I knew I was going to go the multifamily route just because of the higher cash flow per purchase price situation.
Cool. Very cool. So if you could, I know we circling back a little bit to Mr. Money Mustache. That's how I got my start into financial independence too. It's funny that you mentioned that. There's a couple people that got me started. It was Mr. Money Mustache, and then I found the Southie Rich, which they came on our podcast a couple of weeks back. And if you could just explain kind of the mantra of Mr. Money Mustache
Yeah.
and what he means by financial independence.
All right. Yeah. And I can kind of explain it in my story as well, because he is all about saving money and living on less so you can live however you want to live. You don't necessarily have to quit your job, but you invest so you have investments that are paying you passively so you're not tied to a job. And he's really, really hardcore about living off of a lot less money than people do, even though he has a family. So I wasn't making much money. In fact, I was only making $54,000 a year, which isn't very much. And I've never in a salary made more than $54,000 in my life. But I decided I was going to save I was living off of about 25,000. So I was going to save up about the difference. Yeah. And invest it. So we cut down the budget. My wife is amazing. She's like, okay, we're going to just button down the hatches and live really, really frugally for a little bit of while and sacrifice so that we can invest this money into real estate and then be free from the rat race.
Crazy. And when I say crazy, I mean awesome, because that's what it takes, really. And
Yes.
even off of $54,000 salary, some people think that, I guess nationwide, that might be looked at as average, but some people think, how do I get, reach financial freedom from a salary that's this low, or, in that ballpark? I guess the question that we have next is, how did you choose how did you choose your route of investing? Once you got the fourplex, you said, okay, I got one under my belt. What was your next step?
Okay. So I was, of course, living in Congo at the time, so I couldn't buy properties in my own name. So I partnered up with my dad, and we were 50-50 partners, and we still are in everything that we do. But he was kind of the boots on the ground, even though he had a full-time job, and we put money in 50-50, and we went and bought that quadplex. So I would be over there at night, searching on the MLS, find a property. Then I would email the realtor, be like, hey, I'm a local investor. I'm looking at this property. Is it still available? Okay, my business partner will come check it out. So I wasn't even telling people that I'm living in the Congo, but he was doing that. We were putting all the loans in his name because I was at a disadvantage. I couldn't sign any documents. I couldn't put anything in my name. So we put everything in his name. And at first we just did it pretty basic. We bought a quadplex, then we bought a duplex, saved up all the money that was coming in, and from our salaries, bought another duplex, saved up all the money that was coming in, and from our salaries, bought a quadplex. Just really basic, nothing fancy, just save up your money and invest strategy. That's how I did it for basically the first 3 years.
Wow. Cool.
Same.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So, I think just to bring it back to people, and can you dive into the quadplex deal and just go into pretty much every facet of it, how you found it specifically, and then what type of financing did you use? I know you mentioned with your dad, but get into the nitty gritty, if you could, just paint the picture for listeners and how they might be able to jump in as well.
Yeah. Okay. So this was a quadplex that it was a 1-bedroom units for every unit. So it was a little bit less expensive. Another investor had bought it and fixed it up that we actually knew him, and he sold it to us off market for $125,000. At the time, every unit was renting for about $450. Now I got him renting for him between $600 and $650. So it's gone up over the last 6 years, and we still have that property. And we were just going to get traditional bank financing. We had our down payment, but then my grandma decided she wanted to be in on our first deal. So she acted as a private money lender and lent us the $100,000 we needed and we just signed a note with her. And it was pretty cool. She was in the first deal. We didn't need it, but it helped. It made it really easy. The first purchase, we didn't even have to have any of those appraisals or anything done, which made it kind of easy. And then also about a year and a half later, we refinanced and we pulled all our money out and more, and we took that money and invested in another deal and paid my grandma off. So that was a really good property. If I could have 100 of those properties, I would. It's a really home run. Now I've had some crazy stories over there, but it's still been a great property.
So David, you talked about how you went from your first property. Can you just share with the audience what your portfolio is like now? And it's only been 6 or 7 years, right?
6 years. So now I have a total of 151 units.
I'm going to stop you because I need to reiterate this. Goes from 0 to 150 in 6 years. That's incredible. Go ahead, continue. I just want to make sure people heard that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And truthfully, I went in the last 3 years ago when I started doing this full time. I moved back to the United States and decided to do it full time. We had 24 units. So most of the growth is in the last 3 years when I decided to do it full time. The 24 units gave me a base to go off of and just, okay, I'm going to invest full time. And once you start really doing something full time and it gets your full attention, the sky's the limit. You can really just take off with it.
When you went to 24 units, you decided to quit your 9 to 5. What you're saying is that 24 units brought you the amount of money that you needed to live off of, and then also use that rental income money to reinvest it?
So after those 24 units, I could live off of it, but there wasn't money for reinvesting, not much. But after that point, I started getting more creative with my strategies, and I needed to put less of my own money in deals. I got investors, we got private money lenders, I got minority equity partners, refinancing, burst strategy, all of these creative financing things after I had the experience under my belt. So really then, and especially now, it's not really a question about me having to put my own money back into deals. I hardly ever have to put my own money into a deal in order to get it done.
I think it's important just to pause here. A lot of people, they'll be listening and they don't know how to start, right? Or they make excuses, I don't have the time. You were literally in Africa and invested very long distance in the United States, in Chattanooga specifically, because you went to college there. I just think if you really truly want to do something, it can be done. And you've proven this. You found partners. I mean, it was your father that you started with, but then you started finding creative lending and creative partners to jump in with you. And then when you do it full time and it takes all of your energy and you put all your energy into it, you're going to be successful. So I just want to paint that picture for people because it really truly is it's on you.
Right. We started out afraid and probably still are a little bit afraid. We're talking about a couple states over, like a 4 or 5 hour drive. We were thinking about investing in another state. So the fact that David's been able to do this from across a pretty big lake, I think is pretty impressive. But
here's the thing, and you're exactly right, but we all have our advantages and we all have our disadvantages.
Yep. And
you just have to focus on your advantage and not worry about your disadvantages. You can overcome any of your disadvantages, especially if you're living in the United States. It's so easy compared to just people just living in the rest of the world.
It's a very good
you really don't have any excuse that is valid. You can work your way out of any situation with time and determination.
How do you manage the rental portfolio from that distance? Are there certain systems that you have set up that allow you to do so?
So when I got 24 units, I moved back to the States. So I'm here local now. Okay. And when I was over there, my dad was actually managing it. So I took over management at 24 units and I do it locally. But I do manage all my units and I actually manage some more units. So I have over 200 units under my own personal management. And I do have just basic systems in place because people think it's like a crazy amount. Like, how can you manage 200 units? Like, there's no way. Your phone must be blowing up all the time. But it doesn't have to be if you set them up right and if you pay attention to them correctly.
So we were going to get into this a little deeper in the episode, but I think it's perfect for now when we're talking systems. Like, specifically, what systems do you actually use? I know you self-manage, but is it do you use Cozy? Do you use Avail? Do you specifically use Microsoft Excel? I know a lot of people use different things, but
right.
How do you track everything?
So we started with Excel and Cozy. Those were the two combinations that we started with. And I think it's a good place. And I was talking with Sarah about Avail. That sounds awesome. I've never seen it, but the way she was describing it, that sounds awesome. Just when you're starting out. Okay. So if you're a beginner, that's a good place to start. And when I got more properties, like when I went over 30 properties, I switched to Buildium, which is a property management software. And it's pretty affordable. You still have to pay for it, but it does everything in one place. My leases, my electronic leases, my payments, when someone pays online, it goes automatically to the lease ledger. They can do maintenance requests online. I can do all my accounting in there. everything is in one place. And it's really, really helpful when I did that, because I still do all my own accounting. And I still take all my own phone calls and everything like that. For phone calls, I have Google Voice number, and I just forward it to my cell phone. So if I need to, like if I'm out of the country, I can still get it by my email, or I can forward that phone number on to someone else who needs to answer it for me if I'm not around.
So clearly you like to do these things yourself, hence your Instagram name, DIY. DIY? Yeah. Do it
Yeah,
yourself
DIY
landlord.
underscore landlord.
Yeah,
Yeah.
DIY landlord. And I'm wondering what your overall do-it-yourself philosophy is, and to tie it back into the way that you manage. And the reason why I'm asking that is because a lot of people talk about, well, when I get to 10 units or when I get to 15 units, it'll be time for me to turn it over to a property manager. And even we've thought about that. Like, what would be the threshold that we would say we get to a certain amount of units, we want to turn it over? But you like to do everything yourself, and you're saying that 200 units is not too much for one person to handle. What part of your mindset, like how do you frame your mind around doing all those things yourself?
Okay, so obviously I'm kind of unique. Not very many people manage that many units themselves. Normally, if you're like a landlord mom and pop, you have like 5 units, right? And if you get big and you're syndicating, you're always having property managers. So I'm a kind of a unique bird in that situation. But it kind of boils down to 2 things. One, I really like to learn and understand what's going on. So digging in and being the manager, and I even go and like I do some maintenance work, less now than I did before. But if not, I like to learn what's being done on the maintenance so that I can have that critical thinking to solve problems in the future. And if I know what to look for on a bad roof, because I went up there with a roof adjuster when he was looking for hail damage and he taught me all he knew, that's great. I can use that skill later, right? I like to know what's going on, and I like to have the knowledge. I don't really just depend on other people's expertise. I want to learn it myself. So that's part of it. I like to learn it. And part of it, I do have some control issues, I guess you could say. I like things done a certain way. And I had thought originally I was going to hand it over to a property manager. But then when I started seeing how much they were going to charge, not only on their management fee, okay, so when you hire a property manager, you pay 8 to 10%, probably depending on your market. But then you pay half month's rent when they lease it up. Then you pay 15% on top of all the maintenance charges. Then you pay another fee if they have to do an eviction. Then you pay another fee for them to market it for you. So there's all these other things, and it adds up to quite a bit. And when I started looking at that, I was like, okay, well, when it becomes too much for me, then I'll probably just hire someone to I'll teach them how to manage it. Because I think it becomes a lot of money when you're talking about 10% of
Of a big portfolio. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of income. It's a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
So it becomes a big amount. It's like, oh, well, I could happily just pay a salary of someone and teach them, and then they would do it my way.
Cool. Sounds like you've developed a pretty wide array of skills in order to do not only the management yourself, but also you're saying that you have the ability to do some of the maintenance and some of the maybe capital expenditure work. I'm curious, for some beginners, do you have any do-it-yourself projects that may actually be a lot easier than it seems when you just hear the name or hear what I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
No.
Like, for example, I know, not personally, but I've heard that like laying wood flooring or laying laminate flooring can be done by somebody who's not extremely handy if you like learn it the right way. I'm just curious if you've had any experience with maybe certain things that are not as hard as they may seem.
That's a perfect example. I even have a video on my Instagram to teach people. It's a really quick video of laying this awesomely easy flooring that all you need is a razor blade and a square. And that's like the only tools you need. It's like super, super easy. But yeah, so learning how to lay some flooring can save you a lot. Anyone can paint. You just need to have patience. I don't actually like painting because it's kind of boring to me, so I don't paint. Like, that's one thing I do not do. Like, I don't paint. Like, whatever, it needs to be paint, I'm calling the painters in. They'll do it.
Draw the line somewhere.
But so some easy things that I do. Flooring, I'll often jump in there and do flooring myself. Locks, like changing out locks, is really, really easy. You just need a screwdriver and a little common sense. And instead of paying a locksmith or a handyman, you can do it very easily yourself while you're at the property. And a lot of times, fixing problems inside a toilet bowl is not as bad as you think. So like if the toilet's leaking all the time, it's really easy to change that flapper. That's like a $5 flapper and it takes you 2 minutes to do. But if you call a plumber, that's $100 expense.
I think that's funny because a lot of people think when they get into real estate, like, oh, I'm going to be fixing toilets at 2 a.m. We talk about that with a number of investors and just people who want to get into real estate. And it turns out like it's just kind of a myth.
It is a myth. I will tell you, I've never been called at 2 a.m. for a toilet. Every once in a while I get an emergency call at the night. Okay, it does happen sometimes, but very, very rare. And I have, like I said, 200 units. But I do have a crazy story where it was like 9 o'clock at night and I had kicked out this one tenant because they had some other roommate in there who was doing drugs. And anyways, it was a bad situation. I got them out and the place was vacant. The guy on the other side of the duplex calls me at like 10 o'clock. He's like, there's water coming into my unit from next door. I'm like, oh no, what's going on? I don't know, there's water. You got to come out here. So this was before I had a full-time maintenance guy. So it was just me. I was the maintenance guy. So I like drove on out there and I knew it was okay. It was probably a leak somewhere. And I looked, sure enough, the people who had lived there or someone who knew them who were on drugs came in and they tore all the copper out of the basement of the apartment.
We've heard about this before happening. Like apparently
all the copper, they tore all the copper pipes out from there just for the copper and then left water pouring down. And it was like the water was turned off, but at the street, but it wasn't turned off all the way. So it was still enough to come in. So it wasn't like spraying all over, but it was coming in. So I had to go to Home Depot and get what they call a shark bite. And it's a really easy thing. Like it's a shark bite stopper. And all you do is push it on the end of the pipe. Like you just have to make sure it's cut right and push it on the end and it stopped it. And then
but you had to drive there and all that time.
Oh yeah. I drove there and I did that. Right.
I'm curious what type of this for a lot of people, this would like ruin their entire, real estate investing experience. They're done. They're never dealing with it again. Do you have a value? What did this end up costing you in total?
Yeah,
or was there like a result from that?
Well, not the time, but also the expenses. Not only that, they destroyed the AC. I had to put a new AC in there. I mean, those tenants cost me easily $6,000. And if that was my only duplex, if that was my first duplex, yeah, I would have been like, this is horrible. And, you might throw in the towel. And that's why it's kind of hard. I do things very creatively without money down. But when you're starting out, you need to have reserves because when these crazy things happen, when homeless people are breaking in and staying in your place and you're just like, man, I'm just trying to get this place rented out, but there's homeless people breaking in here. And I was like writing kind notes to them, like, would you please stop staying here? I'm trying to get this rented out. So when things like that happen, and if it's your only property, a lot of people get burnt. And then those are the people who are telling you, oh, never get into real estate. It was the worst thing. But when you have a bigger portfolio, it's just noise because everything else is going so well. You realize, okay, this was a headache. This was annoying, but on the big picture, it's working out.
There's a lot of perseverance in that.
Yeah.
That's it's cool.
I think a lot of it is mindset too. It's like, obviously you got to buy your deals right. And a lot of people say for new beginners or for beginning investors, you have to hit at least a single on your first deal. So that way you can keep going. Right. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people getting into it, it is a job. Like it's not like when they say passive income, it's not like you just set it and forget it with real estate. It's tangible. You can manipulate it, unlike something in the stock market where you just set it and forget it. Real estate is not that for the most part.
At least in the beginning, for sure.
Right. And until you have the systems created and have the well-oiled machine running, it's not that. So I think that's important to note. And we'll dive into more of your stories here coming up soon. But I did one quick one. It's honestly a personal story for us, for a personal question. It's like, do you have any recommendations for, say, when you're turning over the next unit for DIY projects that can enhance the value and potentially increase the rent before you put in the new tenants? We've heard flooring, light fixtures, just certain things like that. I want your take as in your hands on here.
Yeah. So you want to look at the market that you're, renting out for. So if you're doing single family in a nicer market, that's going to be a little bit different than if you have a duplex in like a C-class area.
Let's
and by C-class, the duplex?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're going to just get a duplex, what I do, I will put that new flooring in. It's like I do like a gray color flooring. It looks good. And then I paint the walls gray and white because that's what's in right now. So like gray wall, white trim, just doing that versus if you just painted it beige will get you more in rent. It's unbelievable. And then I like to change out, sometimes they look bad. So if they look bad, the floor registers for the heating and air vents, they're really cheap. Like it's like $7 or whatever at Home Depot for each one. But when you pop those out and they look brand new, I was like, oh, wow, this is brand new. You have the floor and you have the register and you got the walls painted. Most other stuff, they'll look past. I mean, if it's an ugly fixture, I'll change it. But normally I don't even change fixtures. Those are the main, and like I can get it done quick and I can get it done cheaply, and then I can bump up the rent.
Those are super easy too. To be honest with you, I own my personal residence and I did all those things. Literally all those. But I just did it out of aesthetics, and I'm anal about certain things. I like things a certain way. I painted the walls gray. I changed the registers to this matte black, and then our floors were already gray. But that I wanted this property specifically because they were gray. And it's a weird thing, but it's in, like you said, right? And I'm a testament to, like, I would totally rent a place. I'd probably pay a little bit more money based on all three of those things I said.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get more people to come in to see it. You'll get a higher type of quality tenant. It's pretty easy. And I don't like going over the top with my remodels. Sometimes I don't even, if I'm in a rush, because vacancies kill you. Like, people don't realize if your place sits empty for a month, you're probably not going to make profit for a year. Like, especially if you didn't buy it like super right. If your margins are tight, if you're vacant for a month, including your repair costs, you're probably out of profit for a whole year. If it sits for 2 months, you're not making any profit for 2 years. So filling stuff quickly is really, really important. So you want to get the higher rent, but you also want to fill it quickly. So sometimes when I'm in a rush, I have like maybe quite a bit coming available at once, or my workers are busy. Like right now, my maintenance guy, he's actually out because he got sick. Anyways, so sometimes I'll turn an apartment to somebody and not do any work to it. And it will just be like, hey, here's a deal. I'll only do half a deposit and you take it as is. And they're like, oh, sweet, I only have to pay half a deposit. Yeah, let's do it. So like, just like making side deals, that I can do that because I manage my own properties. I can make side deals all day long if I need to fill something really quickly, or if I want to make it really nice. I have that flexibility.
So I think that's awesome. How about, we always hear kitchen and bathrooms are, you enhance those, you make, the rent obviously goes up, but also you sell the house for more down the line. Do you do any specific like DIY projects in there to enhance the value? Or I know you said you're pretty quick, small project first.
Right. Yeah. So I've noticed, kitchen and bath, sometimes I'll paint the cabinets in the kitchen like that. That's a quick thing. And also replace the countertop in the kitchen. You can normally get pretty cheap countertop. You don't have to put granite or whatever if it looks nice. Now you can do granite. It's different, right? I'm not trying to sell single family homes. If it's a single family home, yeah, you go a little bit nicer. It's just that people expect more. When it's just a duplex rental, you kind of have to stay in your area. So I don't really spend too much money on like big kitchen remodels or big bathroom remodels unless it's really needed.
Cool. Those are really good advice, because I think we're going to come into a situation where we have one unit is vacant and one is occupied. So we're probably going to we really want to get it filled within the first 10 days, ideally. Mm-hmm. So it'll be an interesting venture for us, and we're going to do it. I can guarantee it. So
yeah. So before we get into kind of I want to get into your stories really bad, but before we get in there, I have one last one for you, because I was listening to another podcast that you're on, and I heard that you own your own street.
Yeah.
Can you please share that with listeners? I think it's fantastic and a testament to your hard work.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another tip for all of you people out there. Network. Like, I got most of my deals by networking. I don't have a buyer's agent who just brought me all this stuff. In fact, I never use a buyer's agent. I always go straight to a listing agent, and I go straight to all the listing agents. Like, I just contact everybody like, hey, I'm buying real estate. If you have something, let me know. Multifamily specifically. And hopefully someone will listen to this podcast who has a property in Chattanooga and will call me up and say, hey, I want to sell that. It really can happen. So When you network, you have more options and more opportunities. I was trying to buy a property and I contacted the realtor directly, and that property fell through because of the seller was ridiculous. Anyways, really ridiculous. And I ended up buying that property 2.5 years later. But anyways, that's another story. So she kind of felt bad or whatever, but she said, well, I have this other, like it was her cousin or something, who has a street of duplexes. If you're interested, he wants to sell those. We can get him under contract. I was like, yeah, let me take a look. So she sent me all the details and I'm like, yeah, boom. Okay, let's do it. I signed a contract and it was one dead end street and it has a cul-de-sac there and it has some street lights, but that's my private street. So I have to pay the street lights on it. Like every month I get a bill for the street lights. And then it has 11 duplexes just down this one little street. And it's in a beautiful area, like 2-minute walk from the river. It's great. But the thing was, the owner didn't realize necessarily the value he had there because I bought it at a high price in comparison to its rents. But the thing was, he was renting them for like $650 a month, and they were 3-bedroom duplexes. And now I'm renting them a year and a half later for $1,000 a month.
Wow.
So you increased it by like 40% roughly.
Yes. And all I did was paint them gray and white and put that flooring in. It's like, it only costs me like $2,000 to turn something over there. And so with a $2,000 investment, now I'm bumping rents up to $1,000 a month, and it's going great.
Insane. If you maybe don't have to give exact numbers, but rough numbers on like what could you buy a street for that has 11 duplexes on it?
Well, it depends when, right? Mm-hmm. Prices are going up. So that one, I have it here. I'll pull it up. I'll tell you what I think. Oh no, I don't have it there. I was going to tell you exactly what we bought it for. My first street of duplexes, that was my second street. Actually, I have a first street of duplexes, but I don't own the whole street. There's 2 duplexes I don't own on that street. So I don't own that whole street, but that one, I'm in contact with them. I said, hey, will you sell those to me? Like, let me know. I want to buy them. But so that street was 10 duplexes, and I got that for $1,150,000.
Wow.
And this other street was more expensive. I think we got it for, it was $1,390,000.
Cool. So you're dealing with, some higher prices, but to get 11 duplexes for that, it's a pretty, it's a bargain actually.
Some people will buy $1 million luxury house and just live in it.
Yeah.
And just live in it and pay the mortgage. My guy over here is having people pay for his lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So
one of the next things we wanted to dive into is specific like tenant stories, and not to scare people. That's not the intention here. It's more just like, if you have any, I know you have a couple funny or maybe like almost like horror stories, but not only speak to that, but also the fortitude that it takes to say, this is just noise. Like you said, this is just something that happens. It's something that you should expect. Maybe some of these things are a little crazy.
Maybe you shouldn't expect.
Yeah, but in the same breath to say, I've built this empire, so to speak, that pays for my lifestyle, and I know I'm going to get through this thing and on to the next one.
Right. So it's basically like I say, you have headache for return, right? So you exchange some headaches for returns. If you try to chase a return too much, like you go into those war zone areas, and then you're going to have a lot of headaches. You think your return is going to be really great, like you're buying it really cheap and the return's supposed to be really great, but you're going to have a lot of headaches. So I try to balance the headache versus the return. I don't want something that's zero headache. Like I don't want a condo with an HOA in an A-class neighborhood that I do nothing with, because the return is going to be nothing. Okay. So like you said before, real estate is not passive, especially when you turn it into a business. And that's when the true growth comes, is when you turn it into a business. Like you could passively, I guess, have a duplex that a property manager does, but if you take it seriously and turn it into a business, there's no way it's passive. So having said all of that, I have properties that give me sometimes headaches, but also a great return. One day, and here's a good example of, it's a minor headache, it's not that big of a deal because I showed up. But anyways, so I'm driving to my duplex because one of my tenants, the stove stopped working. And having watched the stove repair guy, I've learned how to fix stoves, some issues of stoves. It's normally pretty easy. And like, if it's the computer, I know how to pull out the computer and put a new computer in. I just go buy it, and it's a lot cheaper than having the repair guy do it. Okay. So I had to put a new computer in the stove, and I was driving there, and I show up, and there was, no joke, 12 cop cars all around the property. And all these cops standing out the property. I'm like, what is going on? So I pull up, I say, hey, what's going on? They're like, oh, we have a warrant for that guy up there. We tried it. His car's hot. We tested his car. We know he's hot, so he's inside, but he's not coming to the door. We're just waiting for the warrant to come back from the judge, and we're going to break it down. And I was like, whoa, before you break it down, would you like me to give you the key so you can just open it? And I have most all my doors on a master lock system. So I just have one key, and I can get into all my doors. It's it's called Quickset 816.
We've heard about this before. Our buddy Ian showed us this. I don't know if it's the same one, but like it blew our mind. We're like, we have to.
It's a double cylinder, so as the tenant key goes in one, and then you turn it, and it's got the master key on the top.
Same thing.
That's it.
Anyways, I have a video about that on my Instagram as well, at DIY_landlord, if you guys want to check it out. But great lock. Anyways, so I go and I show the cops like how the master key system works, so they can do it on that door. And I say, okay, here's my key. When you get the warrant back, instead of breaking down the door, you can just use the key. And they're like, okay, fine. So I'm still there, and they get the warrant back, and they go and they open the door, and get on the ground, and they pull him out. And all I see is him coming out, and he's like, man, David, I'm so sorry, David. It's not her fault. Don't kick her out. I'm so sorry. I was like, okay, man. All right. Like, I don't know what you did, but I don't think I want you still living here when you have this many cops after you.
Basically in your own version of cops there.
Right.
I'm like, I feel like I'm there filming you.
You know what's incredible about this, David, is that you've developed a sense of humor with it, where I think because you know your future goals, and you have this mindset that's framed around it's your business, and you're going to make it through no matter what. Because like I said, a lot of people would just be like, this is crazy, I'm done, and throw in the towel, like you said.
Yeah, which you can do that, but you're not going to, if you have a goal and you're trying to achieve it, you're not going to let these little bumps stop you. You do also have to be level-headed and let a lot, if you're going to manage your own properties, you have to be able to let a lot just roll off and not get heated. Because if you get heated and they're heated, it's a disaster. I wasn't always the calmest person in the world. If you ask anyone who went to high school with me, they would be surprised. But yeah, I just stay calm with all my tenants. I'm not a jerk to them. I'm not like going to cuss him out because he had the police there. It's just like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Whatever, we'll move on. I was just happy. Honestly, I was happy because I just saved myself like $300 from having to replace a new door.
Well, because the police didn't kick it down.
Yeah, because they will kick it down. They never contact the owner, and they'll just kick it down, and then you have to replace it like right away because the people can't stay there without a door on it. So I saved myself that. I mean, I have had a door kicked down before, and I had to replace it. So I know.
So that's a wild one.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories regarding animals? I know you potentially have a corn stock issue here.
Oh yeah. So
ones.
I have a tenant who called me and was really, really upset because someone was growing corn. This is an apartment complex, and they had planted corn down in like this little gully near the window. And so it was near his window, and he was really, really upset.
What are people doing? It doesn't make any sense to grow corn. And out of the new laminate floor that he put in. Like
no, it's outside the.
Oh, I thought you said it was in the inside.
No, it's like between the parking lot and the window, and there's like a little gully there.
Oh, gotcha.
And so they're growing some corn there. I'm like, oh, I'll go check it out. At that same apartment complex, we always had a problem with raccoons, so I started trapping the raccoons myself. That was fun. Until
MacGyver over here. That is also on your Instagram story.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's when I very first started Instagram. I was like, this is gonna be interesting. I'm gonna go trap a raccoon, and I'm gonna let the world know. And like 50 people watched it.
Hey, whatever.
Oh. But yeah, another really crazy story. I had someone killed at one of my duplexes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was on vacation in Italy, And I got a text message because everything forwarded through to my email. And there was a picture of a body sprayed out like in front of the duplex. And the neighbor was like, this just happened, and sent me a picture of this dead body. And I was like, oh no, like, like, well, what do you do? Like, someone just died there. Am I supposed to do something? Like, the police never call you for anything. They never called me about that. And it's like, okay, so now I have this dead person here. And what happened was I had evicted one guy who, this was a street of duplexes that I didn't personally own them, but I was managing them. Okay. And I evicted one guy because he didn't pay. He had a baby mama who lived in a different duplex who had a boyfriend. I didn't let that boyfriend move in with her because of his criminal record, but I let her move in. What happened was when the guy I evicted got kicked out, he started going and staying with his baby mama. The boyfriend came over and didn't like it and started beating up on him on the couch. So the guy I evicted ran outside to his car, pulled out a gun. The other boyfriend followed him out, like right outside the front, and said, what are you going to do? Shoot me? And he just took the gun out and shot him right in the head.
Wow.
Right
so what does happen to a landlord? I mean, this is like the extreme of all extreme, but what happens to a property manager or a landlord in this scenario? Is there liability? How does it work?
And that's the crazy thing. Nothing. The cops never contacted me. I didn't have to do any cleanup, fortunately, because he didn't die inside. All the blood was outside the house. So there was no like hazmat cleanup and anything like that. And I felt really bad for the girl. So she stayed there for like a couple of months, but I let her break her lease when she found another place and just move out. Because I felt really, really bad for her. Like, who wants to stay in a place where your boyfriend got killed by it was just, So she moved out, but after that, I got it rented again, and then we sold it.
All right, let's lighten the mood a little bit here.
That's great, though. I mean, it happens.
I mean, here's the thing. Here's what I'll relate this back to. If you can manage tenants or you can manage a business, and that happens to you, and you come out on the other side, I have no fear. Like, we can do it. We can do whatever, because that is crazy.
Most things, and here's the truth. Most things, even when it's big problems, like I have some, like this year I had some expensive septic tank issues, and it's really annoying, and it's backing up, and I'm trying to fix it for the tenants, and they're really upset, and I'm upset because I can't get it fixed properly. But I've found that, and it's kind of, I don't know, might sound bad, but most problems can be solved with money. It's just, how much is it going to cost? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be personal. You don't have to take it personal. It's just like, okay, how much is it going to cost for me to fix this problem? And most problems, when it comes to real estate, can just be fixed with a certain amount of money.
Okay. What has been your most expensive problem that you've had to fix?
My overall expensive mistake was a duplex where I kept having people, like the homeless people broke in, and then I put a tenant in there who then did too much damage and didn't pay rent, and I had to kick them out, like on that duplex. And then I had to replace the roof. I even had a home inspection. Here's the thing. I had a home inspection, and the guy said the roof was fine. Well, he said no signs, but if you need to, you can get a roofer to look at it, whatever. But like the home inspector said the roof was fine. I bought the duplex. Homeless people, when it would be vacant, homeless people would come stay in it. And then I put a tenant in there who ended up being no good. And that was my fault. I didn't screen them properly, or I didn't stay on them as I should have. I was kind of newer in my management career, but it was my mistake. But we lost, over the course of a year, I lost $12,000 on that duplex. Like 12 from when I bought it, a whole year later, and not only had not made any money, I'd lost $12,000. And that was like really eating at me. So what I decided to do was, after we got the roof fixed, I fixed up the one side, I put a tenant in there, and then I sold it. And I made like $50,000, $40,000 when I sold it.
So do you have a certain amount of reserves that you like to keep for each property that allows for the mistakes of a $12,000 expense to not like burst your bubble, so to speak?
Now, not really, because I just make sure I have enough money around, especially in the uncertain times. Right now, I just like to have some cash around, or access to cash with lines of credit. But I always put 10% aside, like in my calculations, 10% aside for maintenance, and repairs, 5% aside for vacancy. Especially when I first started out, I used to put them in different buckets. And when we were going to go do taxes, the tax accountant was like, what's this? No, that's still profit. Like, well, we just put it in different buckets. Like, we still had the money sitting there, but it was in the maintenance bucket. It was in the vacancy bucket. And then you put like $200 a year into the CapEx for when something goes wrong. But really, if something goes wrong in your first year, you don't have that money built up. That's why if you're starting, it's good to have some reserves in case you do happen to be in an unfortunate certain circumstance. Like I was, where I lost $12,000, but then I made it all back and a lot more. But that's also because the market saved me. Like, if the market hadn't gone up, or I hadn't bought it right, like I did buy it at a deal price, but if the market didn't go up and I didn't buy it right, I would have been sunk.
So you mentioned that you partnered up with your dad for a lot of deals. Yes. For someone that's going to go in a 50-50 partnership, and I think a lot of people are going to do this starting out, what's your recommendation for banking? Like, how you set up accounts and, funneling cash into there and then pumping it back out into the business?
So we just set up a joint business account that we were both on, and it was pretty basic like that. We both had access to that account. Now you have to be with someone you trust. Okay. If you're going in business with someone, it has to be someone that you trust. Like, you have to trust them to have access to that bank account. Your partnership's not going to work if you think, oh, I'm going to put 10,000 in this account, but what if they take it out of this account? Like, if you're thinking that, don't get into business with that person.
Right.
It's just that simple. But yeah, so we would put money in there, and really we just kept the money in the business account, and we didn't start pulling stuff out until like 2 years ago is when we took any money out of the business. As far as
you waited till you're 2 years in?
I like 4 years in before we took any money out of it.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy.
Everything was just being reinvested. Now, my dad was getting his management fee when he was managing it, and now I get my management fee as I'm managing it. So that's what I used to live off of, is the management fee.
Got it. So you pay yourself a management fee from your own business. That's cool.
Yep. 8% every month. I just pay myself, and it's grown to be quite a income, I must say.
Yeah. Hey, probably better than the 54,000.
Yes.
Not saying that's bad by any means,
right.
But it is. So one last question in regards to systems and kind of how you manage your business. Can you just paint a picture of like a day in the life of a landlord / real estate investor? I like to ask this question because like, first thing you do when you wake up, like, do you set a calendar? Do you have certain meetings that you, I don't know. It's just,
yeah. No, that's a good question, because how I say it is like, I'm part-time, full-time. Like, I'm very flexible in my life. I can take a day off if I need to take a day off. I can take an afternoon off to be with the kids, but then I might be working until like midnight on another night while I'm trying to catch up. Okay. And my phone's always on. So if someone calls me, I'm on call basically, but they don't really disturb me that much. What I do is I just use my Google Calendar, and I set it up. I put all my appointments in there in my Google Calendar, and it sends me email alerts, even like stuff I need to do. So if like this day I need to get all my accounting done, like I do accounting one day of the week, one day out of the month. So this day I'm going to do all my accounting. I'll put it on my calendar and like, okay, this is my accounting. And then it'll show up in my email as a reminder. And I don't open it or close that email alert that comes until it's done. So if something's sitting I leave it unread in my inbox. So it's always, if I don't do something, it's always there staring me at the face. Like, you have this unread email. It means you didn't do what you needed to do. You still need to get that done. Cool. And that's kind of that's kind of my little system to keep me accountable to myself. Because during a day, I could easily, if I had no drive, I can sleep the whole day. I don't have to do anything, right? But
that's the beauty of what you do.
That's the beauty. But if you do nothing, then things will fall apart, and then you'll really have to do something. So, on a daily basis, I'm getting maybe 1 or 2 calls about maintenance issues. I'm getting probably 5 or 6 calls about people looking for properties. I'm scheduling some showings. I don't always do my own showings. I have people who do showings for me, but sometimes I do showings. Sometimes I go look at maintenance issues myself. At least a couple of days a week, I'm going to networking events, not so many now because of COVID, but still I might meet up with like an individual investor. We might go to lunch or something like that. I'm talking to realtors. I'm looking online for more deals. I'm talking to other investors. That's pretty much how I, spend my days. And then I go and do a little bit of work too. Like, and I'm doing a live-in flip right now too, which is crazy. So I'm working on my own house.
It's awesome.
Busy.
Yeah. But then again, I can take, a week off, 2 weeks off if I want to, and just go on vacation. And all I have to do is make sure that I have my phone calls taken care of.
Cool. I think one of the specific things that we wanted to touch on as we wind the episode down is your coaching and what you do kind of as another sort of business for yourself.
Yes.
And again, we're painting this picture of 0 to 150 multifamily units in 6 years. You talked about all the different scenarios that you've been through with tenants, with corn growing out of windows, with people, unfortunately, God rest this guy's soul, dying outside of an apartment. You have homeless people. So you can kind of coach people through, it seems, any scenario. So you seem to be a good fit for that. Can you talk a little bit about your coaching and what topics you teach people about?
Yeah. I enjoy helping new investors. Obviously, I prefer people who already have their financial house in order, meaning they've saved up some money and they're not just like, I have no money, but I want to be a real estate investor. It's like, okay, well, you need to go save some money first, because even if you can do it without money, you should have money before you do it. You should have your spending under control first. So my target is more like people who are new, but have started preparing their life to be ready for it. Okay. And then those people started just reaching out to me. And sometimes I would just like, oh yeah, just take me to lunch. And they would take me to lunch if they were local. And then I would tell them a little bit of what I know and say, okay, go on your way. And they'll be like, well, I need some more. And that's when I started, okay, I can develop this into a coaching. And it's relatively new, but I have a couple of coaching clients. And how I set it up is I do a 1 hour free session with them. And then we do however they want to do it. But normally it's like every other week. I do an hour call with them and walk them through the process from how do you find a property? How do you evaluate that property? How do you manage that property? It's like a whole, like just one step after another to get someone to go from 0 to what their goal is. And the first step to accomplishing that, I do this on all my first ones, is I make them write down their goals and we create a plan to get there. But that's basically what I do is I start them from, okay, the very beginning, and I walk them through all those steps. And I have clients all over the country. I don't have that many at the moment. I'm just starting it, but it's interesting. I have people who, some in California, some here, some in Florida, Arizona. So it's all over. And so that makes it fun.
Super legit. That's awesome. I wanted to know, we talked a lot about your current situation. I'm curious about your future goals in terms of your real estate portfolio in general. I mean, maybe the coaching business too, but where do you see yourself in the next, I don't know, what's David's 5 to 8 years from now look like?
Yeah. So that's very interesting. I had set a 5-year goal, and my 5-year goal is actually going to end this year. And I way surpassed what I wanted in cash flow. And I'm a pretty simple man. I drive an old truck. I don't need like fancy gadgets or anything like that. So I don't really need that much money to be happy, to tell you the truth. So I already surpassed what I needed in life. And now I'm doing it because I just really like it. But I have to decide next year, at the end of the year, we're supposed to go on a trip. Me, my dad, and my wife and my mom, we're going to all sit down and talk, okay, like what's the next chapter going to be like? Because this chapter of all our investing together went amazing. And I still want to get like $6 million worth of real estate before the end of the year. So I'm working on getting about $6 million worth more of real estate. But I got to find the deals. But so I still have that goal to get to the end of the year. But at the end of the year, then I was like, I'm going to readjust and see what I want to do. Do I want to focus more on coaching? I do want to write a book. So writing a book. And another goal I know that's going to be for next year is to get on the Bigger Pockets podcast, because they kind of, I
reach out to them.
100%.
I've already applied. I just need someone on the end to say, hey, go look at his application. But because I'm sure they get swallowed. There's so many applications.
You'll get on. No problem. Yeah, I know you will. But the other question to kind of go off that is, if you're willing to share, I'm curious what 150 multifamily units, you seem to be pretty open about your numbers. What does that cash flow for you?
Yeah. So it's quite a bit of cash flow. So it's actually, 14 of the units are actually commercial units, and those bring in even more cash flow per unit. I kind of got into commercial investing. So I have about 5 million worth of commercial, and then about a little over 10 million of residential, multifamily properties in like their worth.
Sure.
Not how much I don't have that much sitting in the bank, and that's not how they make, but that's like the valuation of them. It's quite a bit of cash flow. We're bringing in like 130,000 a month.
Wow.
In revenue.
Cool.
130,000 a month.
Then take out your expenses from
right,
that.
and then we got expenses come out of that and everything. We have some leverage. We're about like 66% LTV on our leverage. So
I'm
aggressive,
curious,
but not too aggressive.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad you're being open about the numbers. It's just cool for people to hear that. Like, that's an attainable goal. You did it.
But it's crazy to think, right? You have a one-man business. So I'm a business now, right? I'm not just a real estate investor. I realize that. I realize there's a switch when you change it into a business, and that's where the true magic happens. But a one-man business, and I have one maintenance guy who works for me, like full-time. A one-man business is generating, what is that? 130 times 12.
1.5.
Yeah. Yeah, 1.560. So $1.5 million a year in revenue from a one-man business.
Right. So you could scale it potentially by hiring people if you want to, but then you would do everything yourself and control it all. So
I'll get there at some point.
Like, it's possible.
It's possible.
You can't
totally
make
possible.
like $1 million a year.
Yeah.
I'm 1.5. Sorry.
Yeah, 1.5.
Yeah.
Sorry. What advice would you give your younger self as you go back and you look at what you have accomplished over the past decade or so?
My younger self, looking back, I would say get more deals because they were all cheap back then. It's so crazy. Okay, a duplex that we bought, 5 years ago? We bought it for, 5 years ago, I think we bought it, maybe 4 years ago. We bought it for $79,000. Now those duplexes are going for $175,000. The exact same duplexes.
Yep.
And people are buying. It's just like, if I had known, I would have done all the deals I could have back then. But of course you have to grow through it, right? So you're learning as you go. And it's a huge mind game. You limit yourself in your mind, like thinking like that's too much. I could never achieve that. Or I don't want to become a millionaire. Or there's like things you put in your mind, like, is that even possible? But if you can realize and just release yourself, like, yeah, anything's impossible. Get as many deals you can get if they work. Like, now is a different time than it was back then, but who knows what it's going to be in the future. You just got to make sure that, I feel the key is to make sure that they cash flow significantly. So no matter what happens with the value, you always have the cash flow to fall back on.
Do you have a cash flow threshold that you wouldn't go, like I'd say this is a good deal?
Well, for me, and like I said, I'm pretty high standards, but I like at least a 20% cash on cash return.
Mm-hmm.
So at least 20% is the return. If I'm going to put in, for people are wondering, so if I'm going to put in $100,000 into a deal, every year I want that to give me $20,000 free after all expenses, after all management fees, after back taxes, insurance, maintenance, after everything. I want to be making $20,000 off of that $100,000 every year.
Cool. Awesome.
Love those numbers.
I think we're in are we rebranding this last?
Rebrand. You're in for a treat here.
You're our 23rd episode. Okay.
Wow. Jordan number. Let's go.
Yeah. 23rd episode, and we're rebranding our last segment for you.
So
it's not a big deal.
It's not that much. So we, formerly known as The Last Drop, we are rebranding it to the Fresh Squeeze of the Week. Bring some juice into here. A little bit of life.
I don't know how I feel about it.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if we might get a little hate mail here, but it's all good. So you've given some fantastic advice throughout the entire episode, so thank you for that. But we just want one last piece of advice, whether it's what we typically ask for is essentially a resource that can help a new investor implement into their arsenal and into their life and get started, whether it's in business or real estate. So that resource specifically, maybe a book, an app, a podcast, a YouTube channel, etc., that you use on a daily basis that you think can help them, take the next leap?
Okay, there's a book, and I recommend this in probably every podcast I go on because it literally has made me hundreds of thousands of dollars. No joke. One book has made me hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's called, I have it on my desk. I always have it with me. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's an amazing book. It's easy to read. It's told like in story fashion, but it will take your negotiating skills to the next level. Unbelievable. Just this one, even you just take this one little tip. Say no. If someone makes you an offer, don't counter, just say no. So if you're listing something for sale for 100,000 and you get an offer for 80, don't just counter back at 90, even if you'd be happy with 90. Just say no. No, I'm sorry. I don't think that I could take 80. But if you want to make another offer, that would be fine.
And then
just
they'll self-negotiate. Right?
Exactly. Just that deal. I mean, when I sell something, that I do that every time. I just say no. And almost all the time, they come all the way up to my asking price. And I just did this we're selling a 40-unit apartment complex we wanted to sell it for $2.750, and they offered 2.5, and I said no, I that won't work for me, and they came back at 2.750 the next offer.
Living proof.
It's amazing.
Great.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, so that book, there's a lot more to it, but that's just a little tip of that book.
I've actually read the majority of that book. I have a really good habit of not finishing books, but wasn't Chris a former
hostage negotiator?
Hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
It's a good book. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's really, really good. Cool. I need to read it again. Actually, it's been at least like a year and a half since I read it, so I need to read it again.
Fantastic. Well, before we wrap up here, where can people find you to connect? I know you mentioned you're getting into coaching and you want to share your story. So here's your platform. Let people know where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah. So I'm really active on Instagram at DIY_landlord. If you DM me there, I will respond, unless you're asking me to buy Bitcoin or something like that. But yeah, I'm really active there. Reach out to me. I'm happy to give any little free advice. And if you want to go in deeper, I'm happy to do coaching with you as well.
Awesome. We really appreciate it, David. We think this is a super valuable episode. I think people are going to look at you and say, I can do that one day. Hopefully that's our goal, to get other people involved in real estate investing. I think you're doing a good job. So we really appreciate having you on.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.